I saw a figure in the news the other day which really intrigued me. It was something like 45% of Australians do not have a will or don't have a valid will. And I thought, why not? Why don't people do it? I thought I'd try and find out. And in our Brisbane studio from MGI, he's a chartered accountant. He knows all about wills. Grant Field, good afternoon. Good evening.
Good evening, Derryn.
Now, this idea, I mean, nearly 50% of Australians don't have wills. Is it just through ignorance or laziness or what?
Actually, that number you mentioned, Derryn, there was a survey last year by the Western Australian Public Trustee, and that survey found that around only a third of West Australians had a current will, and even more alarmingly, that around 20% of couples with young children only had a will. So I think there's a number of factors at foot here as to why people don't have a will. I think there's a little bit of that old Australian attitude that she'll be right, mate. And no surprise when you see the cases go through the courts, it ain't always going to be right. I think the other issues at play here is the perception perhaps that making a will can be costly and can be complex. And certainly that's not the case. I mean, obviously it's relative to your own personal circumstances. So if you've got a lot of structures, businesses, etc., then obviously that's going to be more expensive. But for large majority of mum and dads, the public trustees of most of the states have a service where they'll prepare a will for you relatively inexpensively, a few $100s. Some of them even do it for free. So there's really no excuse not to have a will.
What about the ones that you can get online, you can download online, or the ones you can pick up from the post office? Can they be valid?
It's probably more a question for a. This is a highly technical area of the law, Derryn. So it's probably a question more for one of the specialist lawyers. But if it were me, I wouldn't be taking the chance. And I suppose the reason I say that is because what are the implications of getting it wrong? And the dollars that you will spend, or your estate will spend, which was your money, in defending potential claims against your will make the cost of getting a will done pale into insignificance. So I would not recommend one of the off-the-counter wills. And another issue that those wills have their issues is because people don't realise generally what assets form part of their estate and what assets don't. So, for example, a simple one is the family home. We buy a home, a property, either as joint tenants or as tenants in common. So most people buy them as joint tenants, so mum and dad as joint tenant. On the death of one of those people, the property automatically reverts to the survivor. It doesn't go via the will. Superannuation is another trap. People think it's their superannuation, their money. The superannuation is actually in a trust, being the superannuation fund, and it's up to the trustee how they distribute that money on your death, unless you've given them what's called a binding death benefit nomination. You've got further complications then with life insurance, for example. You know, the owner, you might be the insured, but are you the owner of the policy? Sometimes you might put your wife or someone else as the owner of the policy. So there's a whole range of issues.
There's another area there too, like if you own a small business, now you might go leave them a will or leave them money to my family, but if you've got a business that's owned by a trust, or if you've got another partner in there, etc., that can get really messy, can't it?
Absolutely, and the whole point with a trust is you don't
think. Generally they're a family trust, and you've just got a right to be considered in distribution of income and capital out of the trust. So you don't actually own anything, and you can't. That doesn't form part of your estate. The key is to work out how to hand control of that trust to the person you want it to go to on your death. Similarly, with businesses run through companies or even partnerships for that matter, you might have the shares in the company that run the business might be owned by a family trust as well. So all sorts of complications there which you really need to engage with an appropriately qualified practitioner to get the proper wills in place. Business owners, again, Derryn, usually there's loans to and from the business structures from the people involved. Whether they be assets or liabilities, and how they're treated in a will can be critical.
Yeah, I can see that. All right, good to talk to you. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Pleasure, Derryn.
Thank you. Bye-bye. In Brisbane, that's Grant Field. And now it's time for Comedy Coliseum.
I'm Derryn Hinch. Tonight, someone who is a disgrace to the nation.
Oh, thanks, Derryn. When I first heard that you were looking for someone to help make your audience laugh, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I've been laughing at your shows for years. You're a comic genius. So really, working with you has been a dream of mine as far back as I can remember.
Paul Keating, from the time he was a kid, virtually, wanted to be Prime Minister, or wanted to be in federal politics, and he's achieved that ambition. That never was your ambition, was it?
Wait, what? To be Prime Minister? Because my name's Paul, I mean, not every Paul dreams of being